Kitty Pryde must suffer the consequences of her action. She promised Caliban she would stay with the Morlocks forever in issue 170, and now they've come for her. Will she go back on her word or betray the X-Men? When you look at it, remember him kindly, not as a Morlock monster, but as the prince. Quote, Caliban to Kitty, referring to himself. Uncanny X-Men, Volume 1, Issue 179. What happened to Kitty? The Morlocks have captured Kitty Pryde and are now preparing her for a forced marriage to Caliban. Having left the X-Men to believe that Kitty had died falling off a roof of the Baxter building, Storm, Wolverine, and Rogue go to examine the body. Wolverine tells his comrades that the girl in the morgue slab before them is not Kitty, making Storm wonder who could have captured her and why they went through such trouble to make the other X-Men think that she was dead. Meanwhile, at the X-Mansion, Nightcrawler examines Colossus' frozen body and cannot detect a heartbeat, making he, Professor X, Illyana, and Amanda Sefton wonder if even his armored form he could have survived being frozen. Their examination is interrupted when Storm contacts Professor S telepathically and tells him the news surrounding Kitty's death. Before she can tell him whom she believes is behind the capture, Professor X is struck by a powerful mental probe by some alien force of great power and passes out. Down in the Morlock tunnels, Kitty snaps out of her stupor to find that the Morlocks are attempting to marry her off Caliban. When she attempts to resist, Callisto points out that when she was down in the tunnels previously, she promised to do whatever Caliban wanted if he helped her. Caliban wished to marry the girl, and Callisto is trying to bind her to her promise, even though Caliban realized that the girl could never love him. When Kitty attempts to flee into the sewers, she comes across the young Morlock named Leech, who is lost and scared in the tunnel. She decides to lead the boy back and agrees to honor her promise. Before the ceremony, Mask is brought in to alter Kitty's face so that she is deformed like all the Morlocks. However, when Mask, despises of all things pretty, makes him torment her, Callisto orders him to stop and change her back to normal. As the wedding ceremony commences, Callisto addresses the gathered Morlock, stating, "We're gathered to celebrate and sanctify not merely the union of this girl to this man, but the Morlocks as well. Most of us here are because we had nowhere else to go. Society didn't give us a choice. We became outcasts in spirit long before we ever heard the word mutant." Callisto's words resonate with the shared experience of the Morlocks, emphasizing their status as society outcasts and mutants. Continuing her address, Callisto acknowledges that Kitty is giving up everything she holds dear. Despite personal feelings towards her, Callisto emphasized the need to respect Kitty's courage, expressing surprise at discovering this previously unseen quality in her. She challenges anyone present to voice objections to the union or forever hold their peace during the wedding ceremony. As Callisto calls for objections, three voices rise in dissent. The proceedings are abruptly interrupted by the arrival of Storm, Rogue, and Wolverine. With the reassurance that Kitty is safe, the trio of the X-Men is prepared to take her back, putting a halt to the forced wedding ceremony. In the midst of tension situation, Wolverine is eager to take aggression action, but Storm, as the leader of the X-Men, intervenes and advises against it. Storm asserts her authority, instructing Wolverine to let her handle the matter. However, Kitty, feeling a sense of urgency in her decision, urges Storm to stay out of it, emphasizing that she is not being forced into the marriage. Instead, is a choice she is making of her own free will. Kitty wonders why Storm isn't listening to her, expressing a conflict between her own desires and Storm's protective instincts as a leader. In a charged confrontation, Storm confronts Callisto, accusing her of denying a girl the simple decency of life. Fueled by anger and frustration, Storm releases a powerful wind blast from her hands, signaling the intensity of her emotions and the gravity of the situation. The clash between the two leaders adds a layer of complexity to the already tense atmosphere in the Morlock tunnels. Callisto, recognizing Storm's emotional state and the volatility of the situation, devises a plan. She instructs Leech to use his powers to nullify Storm's abilities, effectively neutralizing the formidable weather-controlling mutant. Callisto remarks on Storm's predictability as a leader, suggesting that even in moments of intense emotion, Storm's action remains consistent. Leech, emerging from the shadows where he resides, drops down from the ceiling. As he touches Storm, her powers vanish instantly. The sudden loss of Storm's ability is mirrored by Callisto, who falls from the sky as the winds cease. The impact of the fall is hard on both Storm and Callisto as they hit the ground, marking a significant turn in the confrontation. Leech's power nullifying abilities have swiftly altered the dynamics of the battle, battle, leaving Storm and Callisto vulnerable. Quick to recover, Callisto is the first to rise to her feet. Seizing the opportunity, she lunges at Storm, ready to continue the confrontation. The battle between the two leaders intensifies as they grapple with each other in the aftermath of Leech's power-neutralizing effect. Rogue sees the turmoil between Storm and Callisto. Wolverine recalls a story from Nightcrawler about the last encounter between Storm and Callisto. In the previous confrontation, Storm has nearly killed Callisto, understanding the potential lethal intentions. Wolverine is aware that Callisto plans to even the score. The added complexity arises that Leech's powers capable of nullifying mutant abilities becomes a crucial factor. All Leech needs to do is stay close to the mutants to render their powers ineffective. Unfortunately, Rogue becomes the next victim to lose her powers as she remains in close vicinity to Leech. Meanwhile, Storm and Callisto continue their intense battle without the aid of their mutant abilities. However, Wolverine, with his adamantium claws, reveals a crucial distinction. He asserts that his claws are mechanically and not tied to mutant powers, emphasizing that they still function independently. In response to Leech's power-neutralizing abilities, Wolverine warns, "Bub, you made a big bad mistake with me. These claws are mechanical. They got nothing to do with my powers. They still work." Wolverine's unique psychology allows him to maintain a potent offensive capability even in the presence of Leech's mutant power nullifying abilities. In the midst of the conflict, the Morlocks find themselves torn. Some believe that Callisto needs assistance and see the confrontation between Storm and Callisto as a leadership duel. However, there is a hesitation about facing Wolverine directly as they are cautious not to get too close to Leech and risk losing their powers. Meanwhile, Kitty Pryde intervenes, holding back Wolverine from attacking Leech. She expresses her frustration, screaming out to the Morlocks, questioning if they ever considered asking if she wanted to be rescued. Kitty questions whether the situation is merely a convenient excuse to engage in violence. Kitty Pryde takes responsibility for the situation, expressing that it's her mess and her responsibility to resolve it. She acknowledges the pain she has caused people and emphasizes that she won't contribute to causing any more harm, prioritizing the well-being Colossus. She mentions that with the Morlocks' help, they might have a way to save him. Despite the tension, Kitty acknowledges that if the X-Men would rather engage in conflict, they can go ahead. However, she underscores the importance of saving Colossus and urges them to focus on that goal. Storm, realizing her mistake, and apologizes to Kitty. Callisto, understanding the situation, acknowledges the losing one's temper happens to the best of them. Saving Colossus becomes a priority, and Storm and Callisto agree to set aside their differences for a greater cause. The focus shifts from internal strife to common goal of rescuing a fellow mutant. A solution is soon made, taking Callisto and the Morlocks, known as Healer, back to the X-Mansion. The Professor has Rogue absorb Colossus' powers. When the Russian mutant reverts back to his human form, the Healer then uses power to heal his wounds. With Peter recovering in the infirmary, Kitty leaves, return to the Morlock tunnels, giving Illyana to give letters to her parents and Peter to explain what happened. In the dark and cold environment of the Morlock tunnels, Kitty reflects on the stark contrast to the world she once knew. Caliban, noticing her demeanor, expresses his admiration, stating he has never seen anyone or anything more beautiful. He observes her sadness and inquires if she misses the sun. Kitty responds, acknowledging the change in the world, stating, "It's my world, Caliban. At least it was. Now your world is mine and your life. Who knows, with a little luck, maybe we'll live happily ever after." Despite the challenges and unconventional circumstances, Kitty reflects on the possibility of finding happiness in this new underground world with the Morlocks. Caliban, recognizing the complexity of the situation, announces that the wedding is canceled and instructs everyone to leave. He releases Kitty Pryde from the vow she made, acknowledging she is free to go. Caliban understands what he didn't grasp before, that Kitty's place is in the sun, while his place is in the shadows. Despite his love for her, he realized that forcing her to stay by his side would be wrong. Caliban asks Kitty Pryde if she loves him, to which she responds with a decisive no. This exchange marks a crucial moment of understanding and acceptance as Caliban releases Kitty, respecting her autonomy and acknowledging that their paths are meant to diverge. Caliban's love for Kitty is intense and powerful, driving him to the realization that he must let her go. He believes that by allowing her to leave, there's a hope that someday she might return of her own free will or find the courage to live once more in the sunlight. In response, Kitty Pryde acknowledges the strength of Caliban's feeling and expresses uncertainty about whether she will ever feel the same about him. However, she adds that she would be proud and honored if she could. This exchange reflects the complexity of emotions and the acknowledgement of different paths in their lives. In a touching moment, Kitty Pryde addresses Caliban as her friend. Caliban expresses gladness that the keepsake he presents to her was intended as a wedding gift. He asks her to remember him kindly, not as a Morlock monster, but as the prince. As he leaves, Caliban places a beautiful rose in the hands of Kitty Pryde, making a poignant gesture of farewell and leaving behind a symbol of beauty amid the complexities of their relationship. Next issue, Uncanny X-Men, Volume 1, Issue 180. Whose life is it anyway?